Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm Angela, and I'm delighted that you could come and join us today. And I just want to remind you, if you love the podcast, please subscribe. It really helps get the podcast out there. So today, I am just excited to introduce this particular individual has written a lot of books and she's got a lot of wisdom to share with us today. And so I am happy to introduce Ligia Houben. And she is a grief expert, a life transitions coach, and thanatologist, as well as the author of 4 transformative books on loss and healing, including her latest, which is Allow Me to Live My Grief and Heal from the Inside Out. She is the creator of 11 Principles of Transformation, and we're going to talk about those today. A unique methodology designed to help individuals navigate the complexities of grief and loss while discovering hope and purpose. She has a compassionate approach rooted in personal experience and professional expertise. Ligia has dedicated her life to empowering others to heal from within. Whether it's through her books or speaking engagements, her mission is clear: to validate the bereaved and guide them on a path to transformation and renewal, which is exactly what this podcast is all about. So, welcome. It's so nice to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, Angela. It is an honor to be here with you and with your public.
Yeah, so that's an introduction, but I know that there's likely more to this story about how you got to writing these books and how you see grief as this transformation that we talk about. So give us a little bit more background.
Grief is something that happens to all of us. We experience grief when we lose a loved one. And I had that experience early in my life. I was 12 years old. I am from Nicaragua. I was living in Nicaragua and I lost my dad, my beloved father. I was extremely close to him, 3 sisters. I was the youngest one. And so it was really painful when that happened. It was a sudden death. So I had that grief in my heart for a long time, not knowing that I was grieving. And that's why my emphasis is in validating our grief, because I was a very joyful girl and all that. After my father died, yes, I was extremely sad and crying and, all those things that we express, how we manifest our grief, right? And then life continued and I continued with it. And it was many years after, Angela, when I was at the University of Miami studying psychology, and I took a class in the religious studies department that was called Death and Dying. When I saw the name of that course, it touched me. I'm like, I need to take this class. So I took it, and every single day I went to class, I would cry. And it's there. And then when I realized that I had not really processed the grief I felt for the loss of my father. Yes, I cried, and yes, I was sad and all that. However, grief goes deeper. Grief is not only tears, no? It goes deeper. It can stay with us. So on that experience that I had with that course opened my eyes and opened my heart, because it's there that I realized this is what I want to do in my life. I want to heal, myself, of all this grief. So that course was amazing. It was like going to therapy. I would talk to the professor who became my mentor afterwards. I love him. And he was, with me, and I talked to him and I told him, I shared with him my story, and it was amazing. It was extremely, extremely healing. And that's when I made that decision to become a thanatologist, because thanatologist is a person specialized in death and dying. And I, prepared myself with different types of studies, to also become a certified grief counselor, and then a life transitions coach, because what I wanted was not only help people process their losses and their grief, not only that, but also to learn how to move forward, not move on, because move on is like if we close the door and stays there. No, to move forward, honoring our loved one. So that was my inspiration, and yes, based on my personal story.
Yeah. And, we don't get a lot of education on grief or death or dying, any of those things. And so I can see where taking a class on that, and I mean, there's not many people that would even sign up for that class, I don't think. But I can see where taking a class on that would be very helpful, having gone through what I've gone through. So you came up with what you call 11 principles of transformation. And I want to get into those a little bit more because I think that this is going to be very enlightening for people to know that there are certain principles that make up that. And so tell us a little bit more about that.
Thank you. And I just want to go to what you mentioned, that we do not get enough education. And you're so right, because if there's something that I also want to add to our message is that to inspire people to take a course on death and dying, because it helps. Eventually, I taught the course at the university on death and dying, and I loved teaching that class. I loved it. And because you know what happens, that when we learn about death that's going to happen to us, to our loved ones, when we learn about death, we learn about life. We learn about how to live with more purpose, being more present, to our lives, more present to the lives of our loved ones. So that's why I wanted to emphasize that, because there was a time, Angela, before COVID, that I was traveling around nationwide doing the seminar based on the principles that we're going to talk now. The seminar was Transforming Grief and Loss. And this was with a company that they provide continuing education credits to mental health professionals. And it was amazing because each time that I arrived, to a city, because the format to teach it was one state, 3 different cities, like the seminar, 8 hours. So one day after the other one, after the other one. And I would always ask, raise your hand if you have ever attended a course or in training, in your bachelor's, in your master's, or even at times in doctorates on death and dying, on grief and loss. And many times, and we're talking about professionals, many times they have not had. So there is a huge need, a huge void to take those courses to learn about death and dying. That's why I appreciated your comment, and I wanted, to expand.
Yeah, and I'm glad you re-emphasized that, because I think it's really important, because we're a little bit, well, maybe a lot afraid of death. And it's usually in educating yourself about something that you can lose that fear, or at least lessen it by knowing. So yeah, I would encourage anyone to learn more about death and dying and grief, for sure.
Yeah, it is, because it opens our hearts a lot, understanding ourselves, understanding others, because we want to understand others, when they are going through loss. And talking about that, then I will share with you and your beautiful people, that listens to your podcast, about the 11 principles of transformation and how they came up to be. My first book about grief is dedicated to my father's memory. The name is Transform Your Loss, Your Guide to Strength and Hope. I wrote it first in Spanish. And then when I was writing the book, and I talk about what loss is, because when we experience a loss, it is not only the loss of a loved one that we may experience, but we can go through so many losses, Angela. We can go through loss of health, loss of a job, divorce, loss of a dream, like loss of soul, even the emptiness when our children leave home. So many losses we may experience in life, and we sometimes do not acknowledge them or even validate them. So I talk about all that and the manifestation of grief and all that. And that book has 60 real stories of people who experience losses. And half of those 60 stories, 30, are about a loss of a loved one. But the other ones, as I mentioned, even loss of a pet, an animal companion, there's a big one as well. Okay, so when I finished all that, I'm like, I want to give something else to the reader. I want to give them tools, no? And that's how the principles came to be. And I started writing, and then write. And I stopped. And I saw them, there were 11. And it touched my heart. And it was really something very deep because my father died on 11/11, 11, November 11th, 1971. And I'm like, wow, I didn't intend the principles to be 11. It just happened. I stopped and then I counted them. I'm like, wow, I expanded on the principles because the principles, besides being, based on my own story, also with stories of my clients, And I said, I'm going to put it together as a methodology because the principles by themselves, I have not invented them. They are perennial, if you will. But what I wanted was to put it together like as a roadmap, a roadmap as a guide to help people, transition a loss. So that's how I created them. And they were introduced, of course, in the book. And I developed the seminars, workshops, facilitate groups with them. I have it as an online program, English and Spanish, because all my services are, offered in English and Spanish. And they're very close to my heart because I love them. I love them because I have seen that they help because people send me, notes or emails or text that they help. When I did the seminars that I told you about nationwide, mental health professionals would send me emails that they were using the principles with their clients and they were thankful that they were helping them. So for me, that makes a huge difference. So that's why they're so precious. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So now you're using these to help guide others through this journey. What can you tell us about these 11 principles? Maybe there's some key ones that you could share with us.
Yes, they are actually. And the first one, and that's what I call like the foundation, because they have asked me, like the professionals, would ask me, Ligia, is there a certain order for these principles to be used? And I would say, well, the foundation, the first two, they are the foundation of the 11. And the last two are towards the end of the process, of the grief, the grieving process, because we know, especially when we lose a loved one, grief doesn't have a timeline. You don't say, okay, this is the end, that's it, I stopped grieving. Angela, we wish we did. It is not, because love is eternal. And when we lost a loved one, a significant loved one person to your heart, those moments may come 10 years after. Suddenly a song, suddenly a particular anniversary or a birthday, suddenly it brought memories, and because grief is recurrent. And what happens, like, Dr. Rosenblatt talks about that, is recurrent. It doesn't end. It may emerge, at a certain time. What changes is the intensity of those first days. But sometimes we have that tsunami, that tsunami that I call, when that huge wave, comes to us. And that's why it's important to know about grief, because the more you know, the more you understand yourself. That's why, I emphasize that. So I said, okay, so the foundation will be the first two that I mentioned to you now. The first one is accept your loss. Accept your loss, because I understand and I know this because I lost my beloved centenarian mother almost 5 years ago. And I understand, I lived my principles. I lived them, and thank God they helped me also with my own grieving process. No, and acceptance is fundamental, because if we resist what happens to us, what do you think, Angela? What do you think happens if we resist what has happened to us?
Whatever you resist, you persist.
Uh-huh. No, it is so true. It
Yeah.
is so true. So it makes it harder to people to embrace what has happened, because when we say accept, it's not that you are submissive, or it's not that you're okay that it happened to you. No, it's you're accepting the reality as a fact. This happened. It is painful, yes, extremely. It feels like it is surreal, absolutely. I say that in my last book, that was in my latest book dedicated to my mother's death. It's allowed me to live my grief and heal from the inside out. I say there that sometimes it feels that it is surreal what we're living. That doesn't mean then that acceptance is that we are okay. No, it hurts. However, once we accept this is my reality, then we can make that choice. What are we going to do with it? Because it is a choice. The way we live our grief, it is a choice. We can ignore it and we can put it on the shelf, sometimes on purpose, sometimes unconsciously, the way that happened to me with my father, that I didn't know that I was still grieving. So the second principle then, which is the other one that is also, fundamental, is live your grief. Live your grief. And I emphasize it. And that's why my latest book is called that, allow me to live my grief, because I realized that after so many years, because the first book I wrote it in Spanish, 2007. And then the latest, I wrote it in Spanish. It came in Spanish first, 2022. And now it is in English. But 2022 in Spanish, so 15 years after. And I heard so many stories of people that they would say, Ligia, my family doesn't allow me to grieve. They want to change the subject. They don't want to hear even the name of my loved one. They don't want to see me crying. They say it's about time. So all those comments that people make with good intention, because I believe people are good and they have good intentions. However, those comments generally, they really don't help. And people then have to conceal their grief and pretend that they are okay when they may not be okay. That's why I emphasize that. First, accept your loss as what you're living right now, and then live your grief. Acknowledge your grief, validate it, because when you do that, you can process it and then you can release that intensity.
Yes. And I fully, wholeheartedly agree with all of what you just said about that, because that is, I mean, rightfully so, grief comes with a lot of really strong emotions, and they don't feel that good. And we don't learn how to lean into those emotions. And so, yeah, it's tricky when you first start. And so I think, yeah, having your grief acknowledged and acknowledging that you're in that is important. And what you say about people and their well-meaning intentions is absolutely true. We don't, until I lost my husband, I really didn't understand either how to support someone in grief. But once you've gone through it, you realize that a lot of those things that people say are not helpful. And yeah, you do have to acknowledge people when they're in their grief, no matter where they are in the journey.
Exactly, because it's when you accompany the person. and I write about that in the latest book, how to accompany the person, because sometimes we want to fix them, but we're not broken. Yeah, we may feel that our world shattered, absolutely. However, we're not broken to be fixed. We just want to be heard. What did you, and I hug you for the loss of your husband. And what helped you the most, Angela? What do you say when you lost him?
Well, in the early days, just people texting, messaging, visiting, and acknowledging those special days was really more helpful than I thought, because I felt like I'm an introvert by nature. And so I felt like I could go away and just kind of, you know, cry and kind of work through it on my own. But I realized really quickly that the support was what was going to help me through that. It wasn't me doing this on my own. This was something I needed help with. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, because social support is so important. It
Mm-hmm.
is so important. Yeah. And it's interesting, no, with now the times we live, with social media, being able to text, because before people, of course, people continue calling, but sometimes people, they just need to send a text, and we can feel that they are there for us, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's more meaningful than you can imagine, really.
Yeah.
And especially on those days where, the special holidays or the birthdays or just any day, just acknowledging someone who's grieving. And over time, as time passes, um, it becomes more important, even because some people think that, you should be okay by now. And then they stop
Exactly.
sending that support. And so, and I guess in a way, I had to start advocating for myself too at that point, and start to find ways to get support from people who understood the journey that I was on too.
Did you happen to join a support group?
Actually, I ended up starting my own support group. Is
I
what
That's beautiful. Tell me about it. That's amazing.
Yeah, so I had done some summits. I had done 4 online summits on grief. And
Uh-huh.
through that, I built an email list. And then I decided to just send an email out and say, you know what, if people want to come out, let's do a little meeting. I called it a group get together.
Uh-huh.
So I've been doing that for over 2 years now.
You're amazing. That
Yeah,
is so
well, it helps
beautiful.
me much as it helps anyone else, right? It's the shared experience and being able to acknowledge each other in that space. Yeah.
That is fantastic. And do you do it virtually online?
Yes, I do it through Zoom every 10 days. Yeah.
That's so beautiful. That is so meaningful. Yeah, it does help. The support group. And sometimes people say, no, I am not of support groups. I am not for support groups. And it's interesting because for many years, I did training with the director of pastoral care at Baptist Health System here in Miami. And what we did was, the training was for people be able to facilitate bereavement support groups in churches. We did it for 9 years, over 9 years, until he retired. And then we continued doing it, on our own. But
Mm.
it was beautiful. And that's something that we always told people, know that at times people may come, the griever, and they may feel like maybe they don't want to talk, maybe they just sit there and listen. And before you know it, maybe they come back the following week, or with the following meeting, and then they come back, or maybe they do not. But the beauty is to give ourselves the opportunity,
Yeah.
because it does make a difference when we share a space, when we hold the space that we are all going through something, not the same because grief is unique and we know that, but that we can understand one another, that we are, experiencing a loss of a loved one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would not have known that, going into it. I had taken a grief certification course and I thought, I have this email list and there's people looking for help. So maybe I can help, right? That's kind of where I went down that road, and then realized how much it was supporting me in my journey, and how we've created this community where people have connected with each other and developed um, relationships with people who can really understand, similar journeys, and we watch out for each other. It's really kind of amazing how it all came together. And so I appreciate, whenever I hear a story like yours, of years of supporting people, how many people you are affecting, and then how many people outside of that you are affecting, because that ripple effect goes on and on and on and on, back to their families, back to their friends. It's a huge impact. It's not just the people in the support group. It's the overarching community around that benefits from it.
Yeah, it is amazing. It is, and it is beautiful. Well, you have gone through your own loss, your personal loss, but when we talk about loss and we talk about grief, I always, I feel it, and I think that it is so sacred, because
Mm-hmm.
grief is so sacred. It's such a unique process. It's when we live through it, and sometimes people say you don't know until you go through it. Until you go through it. And after my mom died in June 2020, and I said, as I said, she was a centenarian. She died 2 months before 101, and she was my father and mother, since I was 12 for 48
Mm-hmm.
years, and so I was extremely close to her. She had me when she was 40, but well, almost. But I after she died, and I learned so much more, Angela, after my mom's death, because it's like you are there so raw,
Right.
and with her death, even more awareness and more compassion and more. So I always, think and tell her no, because I love to journal, like, Mom, you continue teaching me, right? Because of your death, it's like this, even the level is like so deep, so it
Mm-hmm.
has been amazing, and helping others has helped me as well. And
Yeah.
I am very open sharing. I am very open sharing what has helped me, what has not. Like the latest book, I talk so raw, like open. And because I share my story, and at the same time, I give a lot of suggestions, no, as tips, if you will, because that's what's all about, to share your story, and at the same time, that others may feel identified, or may feel, yeah, you get me, that's
Mm-hmm.
exactly, or that's very similar to what I'm thinking, because that's what I get from people. Because about 2 weeks ago, because I run groups here, the 11 principles, I run it as an 8-week program. When I do it live, and I do it on my own, and sometimes sponsored by organizations, and groups, because as you just said, they become friends, and there's a bond and rapport that gets established. So they become friends, and we get together for lunch even after the group is over, so it's beautiful. And I got with them about 2 weeks ago, 2 Saturdays ago, and it was so special to see how they have developed this friendship, and how we can continue functioning, in society, having a space for grief, and also allowing ourselves to enjoy as well, because that's important for people to know that. Because sometimes, maybe, I don't know if that happened to you or not, but sometimes people feel guilty when they start having fun, when they start smiling even, or laughing, because no, I am grieving, so it is so important for us to give permission to ourselves to start living again. That doesn't mean that we stop grieving, but we start living also.
Absolutely. Yeah, you said so much there. Yeah, and I think, that whole grieving process, as I went through that, I learned so much. Like you say, you get into it and you don't even realize, what you're learning or what you're taking in through the experience, but kind of coming out on the other side of that, I feel like, you say that there are tips and tricks and things that I used that were so simple, so simple. And sometimes, it feels so complicated, but something as simple as a poem or a special phrase or a meditation or even music, certain types of music really helped me through a lot of that journey. So what were some of the things that you found really helpful for you?
Okay, several things. I'll tell you. First, writing down how I felt.
Mm-hmm.
I believe in journaling a lot. So that was fundamental. For talking about my mom's, not because that's the reason. Well, and I lost my oldest sister also almost 2 years ago. So it has been, very strong losses because she was my oldest sister. We're three, as I said. So it was, hard as well. And but what has helped me with my losses, journaling, writing, how I felt, the whole process. No, that's one. The other thing that helps me tremendously is to exercise. To exercise, because I always tell to my clients, say to my clients, first, always check with your doctor, if you can do it. And if you have the green light, okay, do it. Even if it's 15 minutes walk, that's okay. But the thing is that when we change our physical state, we change our emotional state. And for me, that was so huge, Angela, because when my mom died, it was COVID. We had just started COVID.
Right.
We started like in United States, basically March 2020. My mom died 3 months after, not of COVID, of old age, but it was that time. So the gym that I used to go, of course, it was closed. We couldn't get to people with people. Remember all that was another loss. That was a huge loss, also. COVID. So multiple losses actually, and so I got myself this this machine that is the elliptical. I saw it, at a cousin's house. I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. And she's like, I ordered it in Amazon. Really? I said, I'm going to order it. That was the best decision and investment I could do because I did it every single day. And it's amazing because when I started doing it, the elliptical, you have those bars that you move.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I would start at the beginning. Those bars were wet of so much I cried. And then 10 minutes after was such an amazing, because it's like, it's like venting. It's like getting it out.
Yeah.
And for me, that was essential. So journaling, exercising, talking about it. I have a friend, well, my sisters, of course, and my nieces, my daughter, my husband, but I have a friend. We're friends since we are 10. And she accompanied me because she was my neighbor, accompanied me when I lost my father when I was 12, but accompanied me every day. I love her as a sister. And she accompanied me at long distance because she lives in Nicaragua with my mom's, that passing death. So talking about it. So that helped me. Not pretending. I cannot. I'm a person that I don't like to pretend anything, even less grief, so I was open talking about it. And also meditation. I teach meditation. I love to meditate. So that would also help me to center myself, to breathe, just take a moment, breathing in, breathing out. So special things like to choose a word. And I just did a podcast about that. Actually, it's gonna come out this week. because it's about a word. Sometimes choosing a word that grounds you. So those things tremendously. And above all that, and I talk extensively in the book about it because I even, share experiences, your thoughts. I work a lot with my thoughts, and I work a lot with my clients, with their thoughts, what we are thinking, because we know that what we think, based on how we think, we feel. And based on how we feel, we act. So I would pay so much attention, Angela, to my thoughts, because
Mhm.
our thoughts are the ones to take us to a place of suffering if we allow it.
Right.
Because we can go there with all those what if and all those stories that we start like, I'm missing you. And then you add and you add and you add, and then you go spiraling down. So
Mhm.
our thoughts are, it's so essential that we pay attention to them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I like the journaling for that because it seems like, the thoughts can be bouncing around in your head and it's a little bit chaotic, but when you write them out, it's almost like you can see them and it becomes clear. You get more clarity around what is bouncing around in your head.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because they are intrusive, they are intrusive and they stay there, and we ruminate.
Yes.
We ruminate, so when we put it on the paper, it's there. So again, it's releasing, put on the paper. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the word accompanying. You've said that a few times, people will accompany you in your grief. I really like that. We talk about support, but accompanying is just so non-threatening in any way. It's just like walking with you, have it beside you. I think that's beautiful. I love it.
I love it too. Thank you. That's what I like, in doing with my clients, for them to feel accompanied, and
Mhm.
next to them, because that's what we want to do, so, and that's what the griever needs, their family members, their friends, their colleagues, to accompany them, not to tell them how they should feel or what they should do, but just to hold the space for them,
Yeah.
accompany them. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. So tell people tell us a little bit more about, what you have for support for people and then how can people find you?
Thank you. Oh, yes. Well, I was just telling you that I have a podcast, and this is only audio. Hopefully, very soon, it's going to be like this beautiful way that you do it with video. But it's just me. Right now, it's just me, sharing a message about grief. So it's bilingual, English, Spanish, and English. It's called, first in Spanish, Transformando el Duelo, Transforming Grief. And it is in all the platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, Google, all the audio platforms. You can find it there. And they are short messages between maybe 8 minutes, 8 to 15 minutes, more or less. And I have them organized by titles, by title. So by topic, the topic, of course, of what I'm going to be,
Right.
talking about. So the person can go and say, okay, I want to listen to this message. I need that today. So they can go, they choose what will be helpful for them on that day. So I talk extensively about many aspects of grief. So that is something that I love to do, and it's there for the community, so I can help them at a distance, right? Just as you do. So that's beautiful. And well, I have a YouTube channel actually also, and you can find me there, Ligia Houben. I have my website, my first and last name.com, ligiahouben.com. I am present in social media and LinkedIn. So I am there available, and I am very open, to connect with people. I love people and I love to help. So thank you for this opportunity to share the message and for people to know, because there's something that I always love to emphasize, that it's up to us and we can do it. after losing a loved one, and we feel that it's so painful, so painful, to know that we can choose to move from a place of suffering to a place of honoring with love.
Mm, beautiful. And we'll make sure we have the links to those um, social media websites so that people can find you. Thank you again for taking the time to do this today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Angela. It has been beautiful sharing with you. Thank you for sharing your story, opening your heart. I send you a hug, and I send a hug to every single person who's watching this, who's listening to this. Thank you so much.
Thanks again. And thanks everyone for listening. And bye for now.